Dave is here to talk about what he's currently doing. He might mention the McDSP plugin or two, and I'll be quiet.
I encourage the quiet part, but can you answer one more question?
Yes, sir.
Those presets I sent you, are they out yet?
They'll be out in March for the version 6 release.
Okay. Hey guys, when the new presets come out, check. There's one, I don't know what I labeled it, but it's P4, and I found that every time I was trying to make a bass work with a kick drum, that I was always working with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 cycles. So I did a preset at 40, 50, 80, and 100. And it's one of the beauties about Filterbank is you can create a real narrow bandwidth. And I was noticing that when these frequencies were interfering with each other on the kick and bass, it wasn't an octave apart. Now at 40 cycles, an octave's only 20 to 60. And so I couldn't find anything that gave me a tight enough bandwidth that I liked the sound of. And so I did a preset for P4, and I'm telling you, is Cole here? Cole, you here somewhere?
He was here.
Well, Cole's my assistant. He'll tell you I use P4 every day now that I created that preset. And you don't need my preset. Just use the notch button and right down there on the lower right.
Yep.
And then create a narrow bandwidth, and then just we use P6. I wish now I'd use P6, and then put 40, 60, 80, 100, and just experiment. Like if your bass, like if you're an R&B or hip hop song, you want the kick drum to be winning the battle down there. So notch some of those out of the bass. If you're doing a pop song, you want the bass to be louder, so notch some of those out of the kick. But I truly, first of all, Colin, I can say this really loud in front of the Avid booth, in front of all the, he's my favorite manufacturer in audio. He cares about you guys. He toils and labors trying to get you really fast, low processor intensive plugins that are the best of the best at an affordable price. He's got to pay his bills, and he actually really worries about you guys. I'm telling you, I've known you 15 years.
Yeah, or at least.
And that's the reason I'm here, because I know his family and I truly love this guy. So ask me a question, not you. Yeah, ask me a question, Juice. Say that again. You know what? I'm glad you asked that, because I use E6. There's a preset on E6 called Classic. Is it Classic 1?
Yeah, look at you. Yeah.
When my E6 comes up, it always comes up on Classic 1. The little slider faders over on the right-hand side, I take all of those and move them to the left. But now I just pull up the preset. My favorite. Okay, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. You guys got a minute? Hey guys, come over here, man. Come on, get close. We're gonna give some shit away. You can't win nothing back there. One of my favorite things for clarity is the E6, because I can control the slope. Like if I'm turning up, it's not musical sounding on a vocal if I turn up some 10K, but the 8K doesn't go up too. It's also not musical if I turn up the 10K and my 8K goes up, because I've probably just set my de-esser to kind of tame that frequency range. So you can take the slope and make that a musical slope, not too steep, not too. You got it.
Gradual.
So gradual. So the bigger question is, why do we want to add clarity or high end to a vocal? Now, in a hip hop song, that's probably not something you want to do at 10K. You might go down to 6K for a hip hop song, because the hip hop song, a rapper is competing with less keyboards, less high-end information. There's no overhead cymbals. There's no this or that or the other. And music is all, hey Bobby, music is all about ratio and proportion. So if I've got spaghetti sauce and it's a little tart sounding, I might add a teaspoon of sugar. If I've got a spaghetti sauce and my tomatoes are too ripe, I might add a teaspoon of salt. So you've got to be careful on the high end that you don't add too much and it doesn't fit the rest of the recipe. So the first thing you have to do with all the frequencies is figure out who's going to buy this song. And so I'll give you an example. I mixed a song by Mary J. For those of you that were at the Isotope booth, I said this, but I think it's important to repeat myself. I mixed a song by Mary J. called Be Without You. And I talked to Mary and I said, sweetheart, I love you, but your last 4 records have gone down the toilet because you're not making records for the people that want to buy it. No respectable African-American male that's 14 years old is going to buy your records, and you're making hip-hop records for that person that won't buy it. So let's make a record for the 50-year-old gray-haired white women, and that's who's going to buy your record. And she said, I can't do that because I respect my audience and I don't want to lose my audience. And I said, Mary, I promise you I won't lose your audience. So I added more top end to her vocal than she'd ever had. I made her sound expensive. I used all my best expensive reverbs. I used E6 on that vocal. And long story short, I spent 18 or 19 weeks at number 1 on the R&B chart, broke a record. So that R&B chart, that meant I kept her audience. I had her doing Chevy commercials, which I promised her. I had her doing iPod commercials. It was her biggest selling record. It was her spent number 1 on the pop charts for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. So figure out who's going to buy your record before you actually. I know Cole's like you're falling asleep over there. That's my assistant Cole over there. I was just telling him about the preset we made up with the 40, 50, 80, 100. I made up, not you. You didn't do shit on that preset. I said we. So once you know who's going to buy the record, then that will tell you where to put your top end. And because we've all listened to music and love music, we've got good taste. And through our taste, we know how to use our skill set. Without taste, your skill set's useless. So, am I making any sense? Can I stop now? Okay, good. Another question? Yeah. Is your name the number 2? I know your Latin brother, Dos. Really? Too cool. Yeah. Can I rephrase the question? How often do I need analog things in my mixes? You know what? 5 years ago, it's a different number than today. There's some plugins now that that I use less than I've ever used. I own everything because I didn't have a family, and so when I first started making a lot of money, I just bought gear. I didn't buy cars or houses, and I'm one of these idiots that I like just looking at gear. I hate to admit this, Cole will tell you, but I've got some pieces of gear I don't use. I just like to look at them. They just make me feel good when they're in the room. Vocals, every once in a while on vocals I'll use, Peter Reardon at Shadow Hills gave me a is it Vandergraaf or Optograph? Huh? Oh, it's got the word graph in it.
Optograph?
Yeah, the 500 series. I can select or deselect the transform. Every once in a while I'll use that on a vocal, maybe 1 out of 20. Now, for EQs, sometimes I want a very transparent EQ. Now I'm going to be a little smart ass for a minute. Everybody cool? I don't want analog gear making sonic decisions for me. Now, a lot of my contemporaries are very happy to have that happen. Nah, I make all the sonic decisions in my mixes. I'm not going to choose a piece of gear or a plug-in because it sounds a certain way. I want to control that sound. I might want to control the amount. I'm a control freak. I want to control every part of the mix. So I probably use a little less analog than some people, even though I own it. Now, some plugins have a little color to them. Now that's different than a sonic decision. It's Colin's got a plugin that's part of the G series. The 6K up on that plugin is my favorite. I love the sound of it on high frequency vocals. Now that sounds hypocritical. Am I using a plugin that's making sonic decisions for me? No. It's not a sonic decision. It's if our spaghetti sauce needs salt, he's the Himalayan sea salt of the plugin world on that plugin. Now, if I want more clarity, I told you I use E6. The Massenburg, the top end on that sounds a little feminine to me, so it might make its way on a chick. Can I say chick? Ballad vocal. What else? Sometimes, not often, but sometimes I like the channel strip 15K and up. But hopefully what you take away from my last paragraph is that if you truly consider yourself a professional, you need to know how to create all the colors in the rainbow and not just next time you do a mix, go for E6. Use E6 for about 2 or 3 hours on a vocal, then try something else, I don't use these because Colin's the most cool guy in audio. I use this shit because I earn a living with it. It works. And by the way, I almost forgot, the AE400 that he has, there's something about that plug-in that it just loves certain singers. What's going on, Colin? Like on the fourth band? Who's not familiar with that plugin? The way I think of it is, I think of it as a parametric equalizer with 4 bands, and if I want a band to not be static but to have some movement to it, he's got compressors, I guess, and expanders though. And I do some cool things with it that I love. But the top band on the right, when you coded that, did you put something in there that just makes it is a different kind of high end, or it's blind luck?
Well,
is this I don't want to give proprietary information, but
no, it's good. It's like when you do digital audio, all your things get really sensitive at the super low and the super high. And then shockingly, the mix engineers that are good, like that guy, will pick that stuff out. They'll make a preset. Oh, I like how this brings out my 40, my 60, my 80 hertz. At the same time, this has how it brings out my top end. Yes, sir.
When you're below a certain frequency, your bell curve, if you're using a parametric, should be symmetrical on both sides. As you approach Nyquist, the right side of that bell curve tends to distort. Take it, McDSP.
Wow. So, yeah, what Dave just said is part of the secret sauce of making a digital equalizer. As you get up to the higher frequencies, the upper half of your bell curve is going to get warped. So how you deal with that objectively and subjectively in the code is what makes it sound really good. And so to that end, heck yeah, we need something special up there. And
it sounds,
there you go.
I forgot, that's Cole's around here somewhere. Hey Cole,
yeah.
How much do I love the AE400 on vocals?
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
There's something about that plugin, and I do something else with that plugin. A lot of times, I'll take a frequency like, say, 1K to 6. I mean, 1K to maybe 600, 800, and I'll sidechain it with the snare. but I'm not compressing, I'm expanding. So every time the snare hit, the vocal goes up 2 dB in that area. And I'm thinking, I like this. So then I decided, instead of doing that with the snare, I'm going to do that with the hi-hat. So every quarter note, the vocal goes up a little at 1K, and like on something that has a rhythmic component to it, it's butter. I did an into the layer on that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Have I gotten off topic? I forgot the question. Okay. Okay. Oh, thanks. But frequencies in EQ are not the end result. They're used to create something in the listener's mind that make them want to go buy the record, download it, or go to the concert. That's what I get paid a shitload of money to do. I don't get paid to mix. I get paid to make people money. I think so. Ask me a quick, what's your name? Are you not proud of that? Turn your thing around. It'll make your mama mad. Glenn, what do you do?
Sam Ash, working at Sam Ash.
You work with Sam Ash? Oh, good company. What's your question?
So when
I can't hear you. Come here. Come here.
use on bass.
What do I like to use on bass?
On electric bass.
On a real bass? It changes, Glenn. For a lot of years, I used a Moog parametric EQ, which are kind of hard to find. I'd boost some 800 all the time on that thing. I don't know why. And the left-hand knob, the low knob, didn't sound as low and good as the second from the left knob. I actually gave that to my dear friend Bob Horn because I had not been using it. I use there's a Little Labs makes a piece of gear called a Voice of God. It can get you in serious trouble. I use that sometimes. By the way, I just remembered, and I'll keep remembering things. Probably the McDSP plugin I use the most is Filterbank. Is F2. In fact, I'm gonna lobby today for a little more different curves. But one of the great techniques, and I showed this on my Into the Lair, I actually learned this kind of late in life from Eric Valentine. Avenged Sevenfold, Gives You Hell. Man, great mixer. What I'll do is say if I put that filter high pass, say on a real bass, I might high pass it at 40. And then I'll take the left-hand fader. What do you call the left-hand fader? In F2.
Oh, the frequency, the Q?
Yeah. Well, I'll push it up, and now my curve, well, to you, instead of looking like this, looks like this. So there's a bump right where I'm cutting. Now, a thinking person would go, well, that's stupid. I'm a thinking person. So I saw Eric do this a few years back, and I said, "What'd you just do? You filtered it, and it got more bass." And so you have to be careful because at a 6 dB per octave slope, that curve is different than at a 24. How close are your curves to Baxendall?
Oh, geez. I don't know if I can answer that question off the top. The curves in F2
They're kind of similar.
They're pretty similar. It was done more subjectively than like what you're saying. Oh, that sounds really good. Cut the bass away, but boost it back up to give me that super low end, whatever I want. And when it sounded pretty good, I just stopped.
How many of you know what a Baxendall curve is? Come on, guys. This is your life, your passion. Eric, what's up, man? Well, it's a mathematical representation of what we're talking about. It has no practical value to you, other than if you love this shit, you should know this shit. So I'm not showing off, but what I'm trying to tell you is use that technique, and then slide the frequency fader around, but do it in the mix. Don't ever work in solo. And at some point, the bass and the kick drum are going to go, 2, I'm so happy, stop, it's perfect, it's great, we're happy, we love each other now. because when you start a mix, the bass and the kick hate each other. And so if you're doing a hip hop song, you let the kick drum win the battle. If you're doing a rock song, you let the bass win the battle, and they're happy, happy, happy. Does that help?
That's amazing.
Oh, let's see. Compression. I'm not a big fan of compression on bass. In fact, I'm probably one of the reasons I went into the box 20-something years ago with Rhett. Is I like to be the bass. Now bass. Think of bass as a fader that somebody is making decisions on how to move that fader for you. That's okay, except that certain things happen when the compressor makes that decision. It's also making EQ decisions for you. Now, if you just move the fader, you're getting the effect of compression without the artifacts that happen at the knee. All kinds of things happen there, and so if I've got time, because it takes me about an hour and a half. Sometimes in my world, it's just as important for me to do a mix in 10 hours as for me to do it perfect. If they need it, they need it. So if I'm in a hurry, I'll compress it, probably 1176. He's got a plug-in. Okay, you got your 3 compressors, and then the 4th one that's kind of the oddball. What's that called?
Your compressor bank?
Yeah.
The CB4?
CB4. There's some really great bass presets for that. Check those out. But they're emulations of some of the stuff I like. I'm not a big analog bass compressor guy. What else do I use on bass? Oh, if you're doing, I get a lot of stereo basses and stereo kick drums. Stereo bass and stereo kick drums don't sound as good if you put them in mono. Put them in mono, and you're not just hearing the differences that the stereo, there's about a 6 dB difference from. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll use a plug-in, pick one, and I'll put everything below 200 in mono, and I'll leave everything above that in stereo. And you've seen me do it. I use F2 for that a lot of times. I'll copy that part, and I'll pick a slope between 6, 12, 18, 24 that allows it to sound like the original sound, but I'll put the low frequencies that I've high-passed into mono, and the high, particularly like on the synth bass. Yeah.
You're saying stereo mix and stereo bass. Are you getting, it's a stereo track, but is it actually in mono as in there's no?
Both. There's obviously there's a lot of times what happens is my Logic clients will bounce everything out or freeze everything in stereo. If it's that, I'll just mute one and just use the other. But a lot of times they'll have a sample that was presented to them as stereo, and it's not really stereo. And do I want all that low end peeking out from the center? And then a lot of keyboards are not stereo. They just add a chorus to one side or something. And there again, I've got a piece of equipment making a decision for me. So what I'll do is I'll figure out which side is not the main sound. I'll take the other side, move that down about 8 dB, put them both in mono, and then I'll create my own effect on the other side. So.
Would you say you had like a stereo
I split it to mono, but I only use one side. I don't pan it stereo because that's pointless. Phase. If you leave here today with one thing, and that's the importance of phase. And at a certain point, it comes to you in your progression as an engineer how important phase is. In his world, it's Satan because he's working in code, you know, zeros and ones, and so phase creeps in the weirdest ways, doesn't it?
It does.
And the beauty of the way he works is he trusts his ears as much as he trusts his equipment. So phase is something to really pay attention to. And if you just take a stereo that's 2 mono tracks and put it in mono, you got to really kind of make sure that there wasn't any, that the DAW that created that didn't have any phase artifacts. And with live drums, who here works with live drums? Well, you know, phase is everything, everything. And Juice, when you're working with samples and you add a sample to a kick drum, always flip the phase because it's frightening about half the time. Who's had a problem with phase here? Come here a minute. Tell me what happened and how did you solve it? Robert. Everybody, hand for Robert.
Well, I noticed that there was some phase and I was losing a little bit of low end. And I saw a trick where you just align the wave files so that the peaks aren't matching up with the crests.
Do you magnify the wave files all the way to sample and then align them?
Basically, yeah.
What happens if it gets in between the sample? What do you do? Slide it manually? Cool. That was earth-shattering, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. Robert. I know you guys are going to think I'm a McDSP homer, and I am, but the way I do phase is the quickest way for me to flip the phase on something. And by the way, I've been lobbying Abbott, who I've been with for the same amount of time. Why can't I have a phase flip button on every channel, you know? I mean, come on, man. But the way that I use phase is I pull up his F1. Now, Colin has been generous enough to allow me to bypass all of the EQ stuff, so I bypass that, and then I've got a phase button. Bat, 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 bat. I do that. You didn't know that, did you? Maybe I could have a phase plug-in with nothing else on it.
Oh, I see.
I've been driving him crazy for 20 years because I want an LFO on F2. We want that, don't we? Show of hands. That ain't enough. Don't do it. Let me see. Who can I pick on? Derek, ask me a question.
When do you use multiband compression, on mix buses or on individual tracks?
I never use multiband on the mix bus. I'm gonna admit something to you. Cole, my assistant in the Hollywood sunglasses back there, he's got a headache. I'll tell you, I'm confused by multiband compression. I pull up C6 and I want it to work so bad. And I've seen Bob Horn, my friend, just zip, 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 zip. In fact, I did an ITL with him, hoping to learn it. And it never sounds as good as an AE400 or just an EQ. I'm getting better at multiband compression, but my stereo bus is very sacred. And so what I try to do, great question, Derek. What I try to do is think of it this way. Whatever you put on the stereo bus has to react to everything in the mix. Now, if you put a compressor on there, the compressor is not happy. So what I do is I divide my stereo bus. I create 5 auxiliary tracks. All my vocals go through one auxiliary, my drums go through another, bass through another, music through another, and effects. So Derek, I get my drums individually. I do a lot of paralleling with the kicks and the snare. I pull out frequencies I don't need. I gain an extra 3 or 4 dB volume that way. And then by the time my kick drum goes to my drum auxiliary, I use L2007 on that, and I just maybe take off 2 or 3 dB. Now it tames it before it goes to my stereo bus. So what I've got on my stereo bus doesn't have to react to this massive kick drum movement. I've already done it at the source, done it at the aux, and I do that with vocals. I do that with all these other things. Now, there's another thing I do. Sometimes I'll make 2 kick drum auxes and I'll feed them the same information. I'll take one of the ML series plugins from him and I'll abuse it, and then I'll mix that back in until the drums just go womp. So now I've got all the dynamics of the real drums, but what I've effectively done is I've taken the low end information and brought it up. But now I have control of where the low volume information, not low end, the low volume information, I'm bringing it up without increasing the volume of the high volume information, and it's cheating. It's just wrong on so many levels. So I like the AE400 because it's an equalizer with compressors. It's not a compressor with equalizers. That confuses me. I'll let you know when I figure it out. I will figure it out. I'm trying. I'm getting better